You are down with.
Yo, Dave.
What up?
Drop the beat.
We like it old school. You know how we do this.
What you listening to?
The brothers from the 818.
91331.
Pacoima, California.
What's up, Dave?
What's up, Caleb?
The real, the raw, the relevant.
No script.
We invite you into our conversation. What's going on, people?
Let me just say this.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
You are down with.
The brothers from the 818.
We are back, brothers from the 818. My name is Dave, as you know, kicking it with my man Caleb like I do every week. Caleb, what's going on with you?
Hey, man. Got a lot of positive responses and feedback from our last episode, and love the energy, love the topic. As we've discussed for the past year, we have to keep talking about these things. And Mike and Zach and Damani, they brought it, and that's all that we asked from them. So really excited to hear what they have to share tonight.
Definitely, man. And I'm going to be real with you. I loved all the comments. Not all of it was positive. People have some things to say. And I think, again, like we said last week, people are tired. They're feeling the way they're feeling. And I'm holding my ground. Look, these are discussions that need to be had. We need to talk about them on a real open and honest and critical level. And we can't just be agreeing with the masses because we're part of the asses, So it's good, man. I'm looking forward to tonight. This will be episode 3. So we'll see where it goes. I'm ready if you're ready. You want to do this?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we are back. Like I said, we got our 3 guests. I introduced them last time, but we got Damani, previously of Oakland, California, now in the Midwest. We got Brother Zachary. I said he was born and raised in the 714. I was inaccurate. He was born in Chi-Town. My home spot, and then moved to 714, and then he went to college and he came back, and this is where he made his roots. And we got Mike. Mike is a police officer with a major metropolitan police district on the West Coast. I think he might have even said which one last time, but in case he didn't, I'll let him drop that news. You got me and Caleb, and we are back on the Brothers from the 818 with Police Reform Part 3. Fellas, how y'all doing tonight? What's going on?
Doing good, Dave.
Doing well.
Good. Real good.
Good to have you guys back. Glad everybody showed back up. I was nervous. I started to do a poll just to see if anybody wouldn't show up, but I would have lost that bet. So, and I like holding on to my money. So, hey, last time we were here, Caleb and I, again, we don't do scripts. We don't, write it all up beforehand, but we do, just do some questions and guidelines. We had 5 questions last time, and I figured town hall format, gonna give everybody about 3 minutes to answer and then 2 minutes to respond. Well, y'all seen the podcast. That didn't work out so well. But we did get deep involved in that first question, and that's much preferred than trying to hold people to some time limits. So we're going to jump right back into it. I'm believing that you guys already all saw the first one, so if you need to reference any of that, feel free. The second one is also out, but tonight is about the next question. So unless y'all have any questions to get started, we're going to jump right in. Y'all good?
Yeah.
All right, let's jump right in. So racism has reared its ugly head in a major way, and for much of 2020, it was about just the harassment of Black folks everywhere. So we're talking about police reform, and the big question, and we even touched upon it last week, is the seemingly systematic approach to the harassment of Black folks by police forces around the United States, if not the world. And so racism is a huge topic. How does racism play into police and civilian interactions? Anybody can get started. What do you think?
Um, Police departments that we know of today, if everyone doesn't know, it has its historical beginnings with the slave trade. The earliest police forms were groups of white men that were gifted arms and deputized to catch runaway slaves. They traveled from different regions outside of the South looking for runaway slaves to bring them back to their slave plantations where they were originally. When the slaves got emancipated and they were now free, quote unquote, this similar group started forming functions because in their mind, white citizens thought they were going to get retaliated against based on the previous atrocities that happened during slavery. And so they built a buffer in between them to control the movements of these newly freed Black people. When after Reconstruction came around, we started having the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. We started having groups who kind of kept the newly freed Blacks on that side and whites on this side. And if, of course, a freed Black went across there, something would some sort of action would take place. The formalizing of the police department as a department, again, had that as its foundation. It was controlling this newly freed population and protecting the property of the other population. And how that evolved over time, who's to say? The New York Police Department, the New York Police Department on their badge, and you can Google it, the New York Police Department badge, and their badge has went through several different iterations since its inception. But its original drawing had the slave master on one side, and then it's this ambiguous character that is subservient on the other side. Now, some people go back and forth, oh, that was a Native American, or oh, that was a slave, he had clothes on, and he was picking cotton in the background. And again, that picture has changed over time, but that's still in their badge that they wear today. And across the board, when you start getting into the Midwest and the Wild West, you hear the stories of the Texas was a Lone Star State. It was a sheriff who held everybody at bay. And other than that, it was just lawlessness. These stories start taking a different turn when you start studying the history of the Trail of Tears. They were, by government mandate, walking Native Americans off of their land to make way for white settlers to develop free land, basically. And how they developed it, or how many slaves they could carry with them to do the work. No one wants to talk about that. Now in modern times, in our times, these subjects still wreak its head. For example, in LA, when Dave and I were younger, and there are dress codes in the malls. They tell us they're gang related. You can't wear certain baseball hats in these malls. I'm a grown man. I can wear any baseball hat. I bought it. But oh no, you're a gang member, but a white guy can wear that same exact baseball hat. No one says a word. So it starts getting convoluted. When you start talking about incarceration, there are laws that were put into place that targeted one demographic. When you get into the drug war itself, drug usage is the same as far as who uses it, is the same as far as white people and Black people, but the people who are incarcerated because of it is highly skewed on the other side. Is there a system in play that facilitates that? Obviously it is. Many of successful drug dealers from California that we won't mention any names, they had a white counterpart, most likely a female from the South or from the Midwest, that can travel and brought drugs back and forth. No one ever checked them. But if they sent the homie to go drop some keys off in Cleveland, he got busted. The same white girl did that same route. So it made smart business sense. Well, don't put no person of color with it. Do your thing. When you start, I guess from a historical standpoint, LA in particular, during the 60s, LAPD recruited soldiers from Marines coming out of MCRD San Diego and 29 Palms to be police officers in Watts and South Central. But they didn't want any Marine, just because you're Marine, you sign up. They wanted Marines who were from the South originally. So in their upbringing, they already had a disdain for Black people on some sort of level. Then their Marine Corps training made them fighters or killers, whatever you want to call it, jarheads or leathernecks, whatever you want to call it. And then you plant them in an environment where we're suppressing these people. That has never happened and nowhere in policing, only in Black communities. Even as it stands right now, we do not have an all-Black police force patrolling a predominantly white area. It doesn't exist anywhere in America. But we definitely got we got all white police forces patrolling all Black areas. We got almost all Asian police officers patrolling all Asian areas. And we like, so a Black cop can't go over there? Or a white cop can't go over there? Looks kind of, but in their community, like, oh no, we're not gonna give you police power to kill us and you be the other person. So somewhere there's some kind of racist system at play. In our talk previously, we talked about gangs that were formed in police departments, and they were targeting African Americans. There hasn't been any gangs in the Converse. There are plenty of Black police officers who grew up in Compton, Watts, and all these hoods, but they're not police officers forming Bloods and forming Crips and knocking off other Crips as police officers, or making a consortium to only, plant felonies on white people, just to balance it out. It's unheard of. So somewhere there is a system at play that suggests that this is where it's going. And when you count the police officers who stand up for righteousness and say, that is wrong. In the case of, again, I use the Midwest case of Muhammad Noor in Minneapolis. He shot Justine Diamond. I feared for my life in the dark alley. She jumped out. I was protecting my partner. He shot her. I realized I shot this woman. It was an accident. Justice was swift with him. He didn't even get, the police union didn't even hire a lawyer for him. We thought that was standard procedure with all police officers. They would stand up, okay, we're here to represent you. They just kind of took a side step. Even his partner was like, yeah, he did what he had to do to save my life, but I think he over-exaggerated. We never heard that when it came to white officers. They remained behind the blue wall. So somewhere there is this racist system at play. We keep plucking new officers who are part of these white extremist groups. We just had one recently. The guy, I wrote a note. He just showed up in the news. Ex-Georgia Sheriff Deputy Cody Richard Gregors. The FBI found a report of him that he purposely planted felonies on, made sure he arrested and charged Black people with felonies so that they couldn't vote. That was his only purpose. And as a Black person, that not only that's alarming to it, but we have to go back further. Yeah, why is it when you commit a felony, that's the first thing they take from you? Your right to bear arms and your right to vote. Now, if I committed a crime that carried a gun, yeah, I expect you to take my right to bear arms. But with this felony, why you take these two? The system is set up to disarm you and to take you out of political side, so you don't have to, either way, either politically or physically, you don't have a way to defend yourself. And that's encoded in these felonies. And these felonies are highly targeted towards Black people because, again, white people, when they get to these similar crimes, they get their charges dropped down to a misdemeanor in many cases. And we're like, well, how did he get that case and not this one? And you see the black people, they all had this felony lane, and then there's this misdemeanor lane for the other. So we see the imbalances in the justice system. And again, is there a racial component that keeps this at play? I don't know.
Damani, I'm gonna pause you there, only because you hit about 4 good points, and we all getting older, and I don't see a lot of people taking notes. So I want to make sure if there's any target area that anyone wants.
Me and Mike take notes.
Yeah, if anybody wants to respond to, please. I want to open that up for Zach and Mike or Caleb.
I just want to say we're back at it, man. The brothers from the 818 with this panel, we're back at it. You asked a simple question, and he gave us a wealth and a very eloquent historical reference to racism in America. So I love it. But I want to hear from the rest of the panel. So please chime in, fellas.
I mean, Damani, it was, you laid it out there, and I truly believe it is definitely, it's a historical thing, and it starts from the beginning of time. You referenced from slavery days to now, and it's something that consistently has evolved, but not in a good way, not at all. And I think when you start to, and forgive me, I'm as I'm talking, I'm thinking of this, that if it is not changed, right, and it has never changed, it consistently repeats itself, and any change that it does have, it's negative, and that negative change, or that negative, I guess part of all that. I mean, you laid it out. It constantly evolves into something that becomes, man. I'm sitting here thinking my wheels are spinning. But if there is no change, right, and if we don't have fundamental change from the start, and I go back to this, the whole thing on, hey, you know what? Trusting, right? You have to have a culture of trust. You have a culture of identifying what it is that actually is happening and how to fix it. And if you aren't able to get to the root of the problem, it continues on. Now, there's so much to this, and as you were talking, my wheels are spinning because it's so right on point. And I'll definitely let others hop in, but it's definitely a root problem that started many years ago, and it's consistently going now. And I'm kind of at a loss for words because my mind is spinning. But Mike, please feel free to hop in or whatnot. But Damani, I think you couldn't have said it any better, because being an individual of color and understanding that's where it starts is key and critical, not only for ourselves but for the others as well. And if we're unable to understand that, not just us but others as well, if we're unable to acknowledge that, acknowledgement is the most important part, I believe, because if we're unable to acknowledge that, we can't move forward. And it's and if you even begin to try to move forward without acknowledging something that has happened in the past that continues to happen, here we are years later. I'm not gonna say there's no hope, but good luck. And right now, with what we've seen, what's going on is the fact that we are still having problems acknowledging that these things even exist. So what does that mean? Well, other than a lot of work, how do we start to even begin to have a conversation without individuals acknowledging what happened and working with that to start? Number one, that's my big take from all of that, acknowledgement. So
okay, so I've been implemented in here to supply the counter narrative, and that's fine, because if I'm not here, then we're all just in an echo chamber. So with that being said, I think acknowledgement is huge, And I think police accountability is huge. But I also think we need to think about accountability amongst the Black community. There's some theories out there, critical race theory, cultural historical activity theory, that almost alleviate the responsibility amongst Black actions. And what I mean by that is, and I know when you talk about crime stats, well, they're just crime stats, they can be massaged, and it's true. But there isn't a police chief in this country that's going to massage crime stats to make them more violent than they are. They're going to take a robbery and make it a theft. They're going to take their violent crime and make it a property crime. But I think it needs to be acknowledged that, according to the FBI, Black men commit murder 572% more than white men. They commit 146% more rapes than white men, 617% more robberies, and total violent crime 263%, having only making up 13% of the population. So if you break the law more than anyone else, wouldn't you then expect to be stopped by the police more than anyone else? And here's a quote by Bernard Parks, former LAPD chief Bernard Parks, who was Black, by the way. It's not the fault of the police when they stop minority males or put them in jail. It's the fault of the minority males for committing the crime. In my mind, it's not a great revelation that if officers are looking for criminal activity, they're going to look in the kind of people who are listed on the crime reports. So I think there's another side to that as far as the targeting is concerned. And then a couple things on what Damani said as far as the gang attire, and then we can keep this going because I don't want to take up too much time. But to this day, people are killed for wearing the wrong color, wearing the wrong hat. To this day, so I think sometimes policies are set into place, although they may rub people the wrong way. I think they're set in place for a reason, for some safety reasons. We had 2 people get killed on Monday. I don't know the reason why yet, but I would say at least twice a month, it's because either being in the wrong area or wearing the wrong color. And to this day, colors still get people killed. Let's see. I think it was Damani. The demographics of police officers. The city of Los Angeles, the police department matches the demographics of the city. However, you can't force a Black officer to work in a Black neighborhood. That officer can choose to work wherever they want. So yes, the city is going to hire the demographics that match the city's demographics, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can force someone to work in an area that they don't want to work. So does the community of South Central see people who look like them in uniform? No. But that's not the fault of the department. That's the choice of the officer who chooses not to work in that neighborhood. And we mentioned we don't see Black officers starting a gang. Well, Rampart scandal was all Black officers who were robbing drug dealers and reselling the drugs back to other drug dealers and killing people. So that was as close to a gang as I've ever seen on the police department, and they were all Black. So, well, I was going to get into body cams, but let's keep this one going if you choose, because as far as like, well, no, let's keep going. I'll give you guys a chance to respond.
Dave,
Before
can I
you
say something?
chime in there, Damani,
Go ahead.
let me reposition this because we talked last time about statistics can fit. I don't have all the statistics. I'll be honest up front. So I'm not going to try to say, you were quoting specific numbers, Mike. I'm not going to say, well, that isn't this because of that, and that isn't this because of that. What I will say, one of the things that you mentioned is that there's no police chiefs that are going to make the crime worse than it is. They might turn a robbery down into X, they might turn this into that. And I don't know if that's true or not. I have to just go by the statistics of what you say. What I will say is that based upon the stats that you claimed, if 4 Black men are in a car and they get pulled over and they're arrested because there's weed in the car before it was legal, or there's some reason why they can pull them in, odds are that 4 white men under the same circumstance might be let go. If we saw a video earlier that talked about black people by large don't have access to the resources that white men do, or the white people do, and so therefore there's no calling the mayor, there's no calling the police chief, there's no showing a card that this is okay. So I wonder, is it that the crimes committed are that much more, or the conviction is that much more for the same crime, right? And so if we look at, for example, Watts, you're going to see much more black people arrested in that zone because there's many more black people there. If you look at Beverly Hills, not so much, right? And so you got to look at where the crimes are, the level of crimes that are being committed, the demographics of the city, what and again, it goes farther back, because last time I said, if we really want to get into that discussion, what does it look like to be the inner city, and why is it the inner city? And how did the ghetto become the ghetto? Compton was once a very thriving white suburbia until black folks started moving in. And then white flight, the evacuation of resources, the lack of funding, and so forth and so on, turned a once highly populated and thriving area into an area lacking resources that caused people to, for lack of a better word, act up. Now, even saying that, I cringe because I'm waiting to get slapped upside the back of the head by my mama, who's deceased 10 years now, because she taught me that or I'll put it in Bernie Mac's terms, if you bad enough to do it, you bad enough to get effed up for it, or whatever the scenario. I don't want to. He said it so eloquently, and I could, but we don't cuss on this show. But my mom always told me, if you do it and you get caught for it, then that's just on you. And so, and that's just how I was raised and how I thought about it. But the truth of the matter is, in a large sense, that's not the same for white people of affluence. That's not even the same for white people of non-influence. And again, the urban areas are filled with all sorts of races, not just black folks, right? There's more, white people on welfare than there is black on welfare. So it's not about that. But the point of it is, if you're the trend looks like, because we have to go off perception, the trend looks like that if you're white, you have more of a chance of getting the pat on the back, of getting the release, of getting the go call someone, of getting the warning than you do if you're black, or the representative population from the urban community that you happen to be in, which will increase the conviction rate amongst that community. So all of that to say, I wonder how much that stat that you quoted, as true as it may or may not be, and again, I know you're giving that information from somewhere, I'm sure you're not pulling this out the top of your head, but how much of that information is based upon the crime or the conviction of the crime because other people are let go?
Hey, let me chime in real quick, because I think Mike said it last one of our previous episodes, that he's not seeking to be, he's seeking to understand instead of being understood. So let me just first say this about Compton. Compton is a great city, right? It's close to the beach, it's close to LAX, it's close to downtown, it's close to USC, right? And that's one of the reasons for gentrification, because it's such a great location. I mean, Compton is like 15 minutes from everywhere, all those places I named. Mike did mention the FBI stats, and we're talking about police reform, and David was hit on it, but we also need to talk about judicial reform at some point, because that is one of the major issues, right? And David was talking about the conviction rate. Zach, he's mentioned transparency and acknowledgement, and Mike also mentioned it. But the Black community needs to be held responsible for the crimes, the conditions of our city, the way that we behave. right? But the police community also need to be held responsible. And that's the real issue and the reason for the discussion around police reform, right? And I'll put a pin in it there. I just wanted to chime in and see where you guys take the rest of this discussion. Damani, you're gonna say something.
Yeah, well, Caleb, I was just piggyback on what you said. I disagree with that. The accountability, you can't just wave a hand and say I am. There is personal accountability, but you can't take a full accountability of a group. Most of the crimes that are violent crimes in the Black community, they are the symptoms of extreme poverty. They are the symptoms of a poor education system. They're the symptoms, and few people, very many people make it out like us. They make it out, but I don't know if I made it out unscathed. I don't know if I'm fully sane half the time. but no, that's a cop out. And again, historically, being Black period has been criminalized. There are no when Black people are in fluid populations or all Black upper middle classes neighborhoods like they have in Atlanta and Texas and Maryland, some parts of North Carolina, there's no crime there, and it's only Black people there. There's no crime. There's nobody shooting. The only crime that no one can escape is domestic violence. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're in the middle, they happen across every demographic. But there is a racial slant that somehow we are responsible. Mexicans commit these same crimes in impoverished areas. Historically, all of the immigrant races after 1942, after the end of World War II, when they got reclassified as white, when they were Italians, Jews, the Irish, they were segregated in New York. They were violent, crazy, and fighting and forming gangs and shooting each other. It wasn't no big thing. Oh, where's your personal accountability as an Irishman? Where's your personal accountability as an Italian? It wasn't until they had the financial means to change their situation. And it was those who cared. And most of them, at least in the Italians, if they got that money by ill-gotten gains or illegal means, they at least supplied the next generation so they didn't have to do that. And then that growth came over time. Now, in the Black community, if you want to hold accountability in that, that's where all failure is. We can talk about our moms and pops and Dave, you know how moms and them used to kick it in Chicago. They got all kind of old school pictures with Cadillacs and fur hats. But when it came time for us to go to college, they didn't have nothing. I ain't got nothing on it. But back in the day, you was the man. What happened? So we starting over. We got generations been in the projects, 3 generations. Like, dude, this is crazy. We didn't evolve past this at some point. So in that part, there's the accountability part, but there is a mechanism in place. And again, I love California. That's my home, my place of birth. But there's some historical, when they built the freeways where Dodger Stadium is, they wiped out a low-income area that wasn't white people to build that freeway. That wasn't by accident. And that happened all across America. All this Black people live here. Oh, get rid of them. We'll mow them because we're building a freeway. America's moving now. But they didn't do that to white communities. There is a racial component to that and why that happens. We touched on Compton being a thriving community. Flint, Michigan was the same way. Parts of Detroit was the same way. But when these industries said we leaving, the people were stuck. Flint, Michigan is still a hole in the wall today. After the Chrysler plants and all of the auto industries folded up and left, that was it. But they didn't cry about it. They had to survive however they had to survive. It's only white people that get to tell the president, oh, you're going to bring the coal miners' jobs back. Oh my God, coal miner. My daddy was a coal miner. My grandpa was a coal miner before him. But no one's telling them to be accountable. Like, dude, you have to learn to do something else. Coal mining is obsolete. We don't even need that energy anymore. No one's telling them that. They tell us that. Oh, you need to do something. Dude, there's no resources. Robbing and stealing is what we do. And who do we rob and steal from? Other black people that ain't got much. You look like you got a little more than me, I'm gonna come take it. Again, if we find a white person that really got some money, oh, you're gonna get the big ticket. You're gonna get football numbers in jail. Like, man, I robbed 20 people. And I can't get this slap. We know there's a racial component to that.
Yeah, and there's no denying the systemic and the institutional racism, and that's why we're talking about that. That's why that's the topic for tonight. And I appreciate you pushback, and I received that, and that's what I acknowledge it. It's there. Well, let's hear from some of the other guys, either Mike or Zach.
Yeah, I'd like to go real quick. So one of my pet peeves about the media, social media, mainstream media, is that numbers are thrown out there. We don't really know where they're coming from. So I should have explained where I got them. Yes, it was the FBI.com, but while studying criminology at Irvine, and as far as I know, that's, very reputable institution of higher learning, was Bureau of Justice Statistics, Uniform Crime Reports, National Crime Victim Survey, FBI, and Department of Justice. Now, if there's another source of data, by all means, explain it to me. But I still think we're, kind of not so much ignoring, but if we want to hold police accountable, let's hold everybody accountable. And I still don't hear it. I hear a lot of systemic. I hear a lot of what you mentioned, Damani, is strain theory, which needs to be addressed. We don't feel, and I mean we as in the Black community don't feel that we can obtain what we want by legitimate means. Therefore, we need to do what we have to do, like rob somebody to survive. And is that the fault of the system, or is that an enclosure created on themselves? Because I know plenty of Black people that grew up in Watts that are very successful. So what is the difference between them and the people who feel like they have no way out? I know cops that grew up in Watts that will say that's an excuse. You're not successful because you're putting that on yourself. But I also know that feel maybe they were never told or explained due to lack of father figure mentoring, any sort of positive role model in their life, that there is no way out. But I don't know who's to blame on that. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. There are people who feel there is no way out for me by legitimate means. I have to do what I have to do to survive. I get it. But the contacting, I can't speak about, back to what you were saying, David, I can't speak on behalf of what happens in white neighborhoods and the phone calls they make. I spent my entire 18 and a half years in South Central, and I'll tell you, I can count on one hand the amount of white people I've stopped. It's been Black and brown the entire time. So I don't know what happens, and I don't know the contacts and the people that they know to get out of. I don't know. I will tell you that it exists amongst Blacks as well, in that when you become a police captain or deputy chief or even chief, it is very common for them to give out their cell phone numbers to the community. It's very common. And I can't tell you how many times I've jumped out on someone and all of a sudden they're making calls to captains. And those captains get on the phone right away, and believe me, sergeants answer, and they're right up on you. What are you stopping this guy for? Captain's calling me. So the phone calls are made on both sides. We just had a female get removed from my division for working in the projects. Her name had come up too many times about being aggressive, citing people, arresting people. Nothing wrong. We're all wearing body cameras. The projects all have cameras now, very good cameras. So it wasn't misconduct. It was just her name was brought up too many times for being in there too often, for creating too much turmoil. And so officers can be removed for being too productive. So the phone calls are made on both sides. I just don't know the relevance of who makes more and who gets out of, more. The targeting, I don't work in a neighborhood where, if 4 white people are riding together, they get stopped. I don't know anything about that, but I'll tell you this, that if I'm stopped by the police And if I get stopped every day of the week and twice on Sunday, I am not going to jail. And it is not my white skin privilege. It is the fact that there's nothing illegal on me and there's nothing illegal in my car. So when I'm stopped, I could care less. So you can target all day long, but you have to do something illegal to go to jail. Now, sentencing, that's a completely different story. That comes with privilege, and everybody's privileged at some point or another. I mean, OJ got off on murder because of privilege and his money and the fact that he can afford an attorney. So I think privilege goes both ways. I don't know if we can see it more with certain races or not. I don't know, but I still feel there's a lack of accountability, and it's a blame, is what I'm hearing.
Let me, Damani, I know you're over there playing double dutch. I see you rocking back and forth, waiting to jump in. Let me say this a different way. I am 100% about accountability. You ask anyone who knows me on a personal level, they'll say David's about accountability, and he starts with himself. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and there were gangs all around, and there was a gang in my house, and there was a gang leader. Her name was Cornelia Johnson, and I was more afraid of her, my mama, than I was anybody out there in them streets. So yes, there are entities where, more importantly than anything else, they teach you what's right. For me, crime was never an option. Doesn't mean I never committed a crime, but crime wasn't the option for doing. For someone else who didn't properly have the influences that I have, or that I always saw education as a way out. For someone else who's like, I just don't have that kind of time. I don't know if I'm going to live tomorrow, so I got to make mine today. I have to allow for those. And honestly, my time at USC has really opened my eyes to that. And that's just been in the last, few years. But here's the piece I want to say about accountability. It's not about who's taking accountability for their actions. It's who's not being held accountable for their actions. If you want to talk about accountability, then you got to put everyone on the same scale, being evaluated at the same rate, right? And you have to be able to look at the statistics, look at the what's going on, and understand that me, as a black man who lives in a upper middle class community, drives a nice car, and so forth and so on. When I get pulled over, I actually believe that there's a 30-40% chance that I might go to jail. There's a 10% chance that I might get shot just because I'm black. I don't have to do anything illegal. One of the things you said is you have to do something illegal to go to jail. Whoa, that's crazy. There's a whole lot of people that go to jail for not doing something illegal. Now, you might not get convicted, but we know a whole lot of people that have been convicted and they didn't do anything illegal. If that wasn't the case, then DNA testing would have no basis, right? People are picked up. You see it on body cams, you see it on the news, you see it on Yahoo, you see it everywhere all the time because they fit a description. I got pulled over. I wasn't even pulled over. I was walking or jogging. I got pulled over on a felony stop. 6 police cars, 12 cops, everyone pulled out their guns, put me against a wall and said, you fit the description. I said, what's the description? They called it in. They said, black male, 5'7", 150 pounds. Right? Anybody who knows me, that was like 4th grade. Right? So all the guns that were on me, they went down. They were like, you be careful. I was like, only people out here with guns is you. So I'm going to go on about my way and so forth. I see that as a successful stop, a successful interaction. I could have been put in a car. I could have been put into an alley. I could have been put in a lineup. I could have done anything. You don't have to do anything illegal to get arrested. Now, you said if you get pulled over, if you weren't doing anything wrong, you don't even worry about it. Privilege does cross racial boundaries, I'll agree. But that's a white privilege because there's not a black man on this planet from Johnny Cochran, God rest his soul, to Barack Obama that feels like there's a 100% chance that they're not doing anything wrong, that they're going to move forward from being pulled over by a police officer unscathed. Now, in all of my interactions, I've had very few interactions that ended up with me, you know, having to get out my car or sitting on the curb or being in cuffs or any of that type of thing, or arrested or any of that, right? But it's always a thought. Why? Because every time I open the newspaper, I see somebody else. Every time I pull up Yahoo, I see somebody else. Every time I talk to my cousins, such and such got arrested. Where's your dad? I haven't seen him in 6 months because he was, and sometimes they were doing something wrong. Sometimes they was just in the wrong spot at the wrong time. Sometimes they were taking their kids to school. It happens. It does happen. And it doesn't mean that something illegal was happening. I just got to say that.
Real quick, I teach at a prison as well. One of my classes is at a prison, and we had this exact conversation. And I asked them, and we're very candid with them, and they're not going to lie to me. This is their world. I'm visiting inside their prison. And I said, you know what? Do you guys think that any of you are in here because you were wrongfully convicted? Not a single one. Not a single one. Now, that's just one class in one prison. But the DNA is out there. The amount of overturned convictions on the DNA, and they have the, I can't remember the website, but doesn't determine that it's a broken system. It doesn't mean that, oh yeah, because of DNA, everybody in there is innocent. No, it's not the case. Are there wrongful convictions? Of course. Of course. Are people falsely arrested? Of course. But again, we're going with the vast majority. And I asked this, we have this conversation every semester with 40 new inmates. And they all say, no, I'm in here because of what I did. So is that representative of all the convicted felons in the United States? Of course not. But I would push back on saying that it's the norm to just arrest people for no reason.
Zach, I want to hear what you have to say, but here's my last response to that. Ask that question in prison, you're going to get one response. Ask that question in county lockup, you're going to get another. Ask that question in central booking, you're going to get another. By the time you get to prison, you've been tried, you've been convicted, and so forth. And some of those are false, but the mass majority, they went through the process. County lockup, you might be in county for a year. Right? And you ask them, and you might see some more that's like, man, I've been wronged and blah, 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 blah. But, you know, mass majority, they went through the process. I'm talking about for those of us that had to go sit 6 hours, you know, in central booking because we got pulled over for speeding. I'm talking about for those that were brought to the station and questioned and held and detained for a little while and then released. But, you know, now you've been fingerprinted. Now you've sat in the room. I'm talking about those that confessed to something they didn't because they wanted to go to the bathroom and that's the only way they could do it. Again, those are rare occurrences, and I'm really going to the extremes. But yes, in prison, you're going to see one thing, but that's through the process. I'm talking about 1 minute you're free, the next minute you're in custody, even if it's for an hour, even if it's 6 hours. That can change an individual forever, right? Jail is no place for anyone whose mind is right and they're about doing things right and so forth and so on. And if you haven't done anything wrong, you shouldn't go to jail. But the fact is, it happens all the time. We can go back and forth, and I'm really glad about this conversation because it needs to be had. I feel like I'm talking too much, though. Zach or Damani, please.
I'll let Zach go, then I'll go after him.
Go ahead, Damani, because I was going to say something. Mine's not more. It's just a thinking. So go ahead, hop in there, and then I'll go with what I'm going with.
I want to touch. Mike mentioned the FBI. The FBI, under J. Edgar Hoover, came out and said one man was the greatest threat to democracy in America. That person galvanized a government entity to set into motion the surveillance of anybody, of that person, anybody who was around him, and anything that he developed to that point. And if he reached a certain segment of the population, then there was a move to remove him, either by criminal means, meaning arrest him for some charges of some sort, or the unspoken. He would have to be taken out physically by an assassination attempt. That person, by no means, was a criminal in any way or did anything criminal. That person has a national holiday named after him today. That person was Martin Luther King. So any statistic coming from the FBI, I could care less. The Black Panther Party went to Sacramento to protest the governor at the time, Ronald Reagan, and their famous protest with California was an open carry state back then, and demanded the situation that, look, dude, we gonna patrol our neighborhood because these black police officers are beating the brakes off of black people for no reason, just for them hanging out. We not having it. They made the same statement that these militia groups are making today. And overnight, we can't open carry in California no more. They didn't have no problem. NRA to this day ain't said a word because it's racial. They was willing to give up their right to carry arms as long as you made sure black people couldn't do it. There's a racial component. The FBI, again, the King family just won a case against the federal government. 2015, 2016. They were a part of assassinating Martin Luther King, a pastor, a man of peace. And not because of I have a dream speech, it's because he started changing like, dude, the government has gave out all kind of money for other groups to be economically viable. They have yet to do that for black people in America yet. And the fact that he walked those millions of people on our nation's capital, that it was that many people involved that would follow this man, that would push the issue that this is what we need. And it's only in now that we talking about we need reparations. America's known those reparations have been needed on the table ever since. You think about all of the black organizations that have been neutralized by the FBI and all the law enforcement agencies. But they still can't find none of these white groups. Ku Klux Klan has been in full effect since 1792. I think that was their founding, I don't know. You can't neutralize them. You touched on O.J. Simpson. And him being rich and affluent, that's what got him out of his case. Yeah, in some sense, well, okay, maybe. But we was like, well, the black man never reached that status. That was unbelievable. Like, okay, well at least supposedly the justice system works. But it's funny, O.J. Simpson, for killing one white woman, his trial was the trial of the century. But Timothy McVeigh, a militia leader who killed 169 people in the Oklahoma bombing, who his flag still flies today. His flag stormed our Capitol. That's the flag that the Oath Keepers fly. That yellow "Don't Tread on Me" flag. That was Timothy McVeigh's flag. And he galvanized white people to follow that. And these other branch groups started firing out, and they were standing off with police over pipelines and over free lands and this, that, and the third. No one is neutralizing them. It's racism. You got gang injunctions on the Crips and Bloods that started after the movie Colors came out. We had the Italian Mafia tearing Chicago and New York, these places up for decades. Never thought of any gang injunction. But as soon as black people got a prominence and their gangs start hitting the top ranks, all of a sudden gang injunctions come into existence. And even now, we can neutralize any drug operation, any gang-related operation right now, but you can't neutralize the Proud Boys. And Proud Boys come on national TV and say, we got a chapter in every state, and this is what we gonna do. Police is looking like, I don't know where they had. They went to that Osama bin Laden school of hide and go seek. We just can't find them. That's racism. They don't want to.
Damani, I'm gonna put a pin in you right there, real quick. Zach, I want to hear from you before we're getting close to the end of this one. So I want to hear from you before.
Well, it's funny. Racism, right? We're speaking about racism, right? Very, very simple. Racism, we're not Nobody's born racist. We don't come out the womb racist. Very simple concept, right? We can all agree to that. Racism is something that's taught, developed, right? Continues to move forward. So when I hear Mike and Mike, I hear you talking about, hey, certain factors come into play, and I don't believe, when are we going to start being held accountable? African Americans are being held accountable, and certain individuals being held accountable, right? Well, the fact of the matter is this, and I look at it very plainly in my eyes, is when we are looked to. The difference is folks are looking to law enforcement, right? Protect and serve. Point blank, protect and serve. But when we're viewed, or when we have this high threshold of racism that is taking place, right? And individuals are supposed to essentially trust that the individuals that, I guess, so to speak, the oppressor at times are supposed to take care of them. There's a flaw in the system. Now, it's very interesting. If you look, Damani being from Los Angeles, Dave in Chicago, everybody else, right? If you ask different African Americans, what do they feel about it, right? Or how they look at it. Now, me coming from Orange County, California, right, is viewed a lot differently than somebody that's in South Central Los Angeles. Is it A? Could it be A? I know how to navigate through it. Could it be B on the flip side? Or it happens to me a lot more. Now, on the other end, could it be that individual, say, I'm just using money as an example, trying to survive, right? And he needs to do what he needs to do to survive where he's at. Versus, you know what? The individual that's there, they have no other choice. So all these things come into play, but when you go back to the root of it, and we're talking about the systemic racism and just racism in itself, and we're talking about law enforcement being held accountable, right? It becomes very, 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 very clear, right? Sure, we have to do better as a culture, as a community. Everybody has to do better. But when you have a group of individuals that are there to protect and serve, and we're talking about racism, right? And all it takes is one view, two views, three views, right, to change the whole, I guess, the whole outlook for a wide variety of people. People are going to do what they need to do. People are going to do what they have to do. So when you take a group of individuals in South Central Los Angeles, they're doing whatever it takes to survive. And it's very hard to trust individuals that you feel that are not there for you. So you do what you need to do. And there's so much to it. We could deep dive into this all day, but it's a very simple concept to me. When we start talking about racism, and then you talk about individuals that are there to protect and serve, those individuals that are struggling to survive. I used the term battle fatigue, right? Battle fatigue. So you talk about a culture and a community that is having battle fatigue, not only just amongst each other at times, but now you have to deal with the very people that you're supposed to reach out to and to protect and serve. When those things happen, it becomes tough. It becomes very tough. And I continue to say it's a learning process, right? I'm coming from a background of education. It's a learning process. Individuals have to learn how to do that, but the question is how, right? Not every now, Mike. Once again, I'm gonna say this. I continue to say this. Not every officer is racist. Not at all. They're very great. They're very good officers. Hell, the city that I live in has some great officers. But nevertheless, there are some officers that set a tone for the rest of these individuals. And when you talk about, hey, you know what? Almost, people use that quote, well, you know what, you'll be all right. You find a way out. Pick yourself up by the bootstraps and continue on. It's very easy to say. Now, somebody like me and where I'm at in my life or where I've grown up, I might understand how to do that a little bit better. I might have had the opportunities to navigate through this a lot easier than, say, somebody in South Central Los Angeles. But when you get to that point where the trust isn't there and racism, right, it may happen with one or two individuals, well, the outlook, it becomes this overwhelming sense of we have nobody and nothing. And the individuals that are there to protect and serve or whatnot, we can't trust it. So therefore, you do what you got to do.
All right. We are at the end of this episode on the Brothers from the 818, and being respectful to our guests, being respectful to our viewers, being respectful to what we do. I'm going to put a pin in it right there. Whoever has a thought, please write it down, because we're at that point. And when we do episode 4, I want to see, I'm hoping to see that same energy, that same intensity. Again, I said it last time, I'm feeling good right now about the conversation and the intensity that we're going back and forth. And this is what I hoped, and this is what is needed. And this is what we do on the Brothers from the 818. We talk about police reform, y'all. This has been episode or part 3 of it. Stay tuned. Make sure you come back for episode 4. We'll see you next time. Peace out.
You are down with
The Brothers from the